Welcome to The Collectors. The genesis of this series was when the editorial team was sat around looking at alternative investments in the context of genuine fears about a recession and concerns about portfolio diversification. Somewhere along the line, somewhere in the discussions, we took a sharp left turn when we realized and considered just how much doom and gloom there is out there right now. So we said, let's not look at alternatives like gold, the obvious stuff. Let's go a bit further. Let's look at the stuff that's fun. Now, what's interesting about normal investing, as I call it, is you have an investment framework, you have data, you have charts, you have an analysis. It's very rational. And then there's the world of classic cars, watches, sneakers, electric guitars, wine, art. These are investments that are driven by passion, childhood memories, random influences, and sometimes just lust. They're not logical. They often don't make as much money as other investments. And weirdly, they're the most visible investments that we make sometimes. So in this series, we're going to try and help you justify to yourself, maybe to your partner, maybe to your bank balance, why investments in watches, classic cars, and things of that type are worth considering. We're not going to build an investment case. We're certainly not going to make specific recommendations. We just want to indulge in ways in which you can spend your wealth and have fun doing it. And maybe, just maybe along the way, you'll make some money too. Oh my, this is a beast. I mean, this is a real beast. Talk to me about this one.
So what we've got here is a Ford Mustang. This is a original Shelby built GT350. So straight from the Ford factory to Carroll Shelby himself for tweaks, upgrades. You know, it's the ultimate Mustang in my opinion, and many around the world.
And it's got the race colours. Did this actually race? Or is that just a tricksy paint job?
Yes, well obviously lots of these came with the stripes and the colour scheme, but this particular car is a period race car. This car has been on the racetrack since the day it left the factory in 1966. It went straight to Hayward Motor Company and then straight onto the circuit. So this is authentic, although not original in the sense of how it left the factory at Ford.
Sure.
It is authentic to period.
So this literally raced in the 60s. That's its true provenance.
Yeah, the first owner raced it all the way up until 1975, and then it was raced by its second owner for a further 10 years.
Is that a positive impact on the price or a negative impact, the fact that it's raced?
Actually, provenance of a car is very, very important, and it adds hugely to the value. Finding where the car's been throughout its life, whether it's been in a movie, whether it's been raced, or whether it's had celebrity ownership, all of those things really add to a car's value.
So it's not just the car itself, it's those other factors around it that can impact its value.
It's the story, you know, you haven't just got a car. I mean, lots of people do believe the car enthusiasts, these cars are more than just a car, and following its life, its story, really adds to its value.
And this era, this was all about the big engine, wasn't it? This is about the bigger the engine, the Detroit muscle cars.
Yeah, and it's an era that's dying out. You know, we've had modern equivalent muscle cars, we've got modern Mustangs, but this big engine, unnecessarily big engine, and big car is dying out. You know, we're now looking towards electric. So these are collectible as they are. Even the later car is going to be collectible because it's something we're not going to see over the next 10 years.
Half the reason I would buy a car like this is just the exhaust note. The exhaust note alone has seduced me. There must be all sorts of strange factors like that that come into buying things like a Detroit muscle car.
I think that's very true. It's an experience you don't get with any other car. They don't handle the best, they go incredibly well, and they make loads of noise. And I think we can all say as car enthusiasts or collectors in the future that that is what we like and what we enjoy.
The Jaguar E-Type feels like one of those cars that everybody knows and everybody loves. What makes it so special?
I think there's a number of factors. It was exported all around the world.
Okay.
It was popular in period, so there's lots of them around. You do see them. They're a classic you do see on the road, and equally they're very drivable and very usable. So they're a classic you can buy, you can own, and you can use it and not have to worry about it too much.
And this feels like one of those cars that's kind of crossed over into popular culture. And for me, there are certain cars like there's the E-Type, the Porsche 911, but even the Volkswagen Beetle, the 2CV, Citroen 2CV, those are all cars that it feels like everybody knows and appreciates. And is that part of what makes them so valuable?
I think that's exactly right. I think as we say, there's always someone who will buy an E-Type.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about them. Even people who aren't into their cars, people who aren't into their classic cars, everybody knows what an E-Type is. They're completely timeless. I mean, we think back to Enzo Ferrari, who owned Ferrari, and he called this the most beautiful car ever made. It's very cliche, but it's very true.
And what is it that makes it special?
They're usable. The styling at its time was completely unique, very aerodynamic, and it was designed from the earlier C and D types. It was a race car for the road, similar styling, similar features, and great performance.
And also very beautiful. This is white with a red interior. To me, that feels so 1960s. It feels so of the era. Those period colours, is that something that people look for?
There's cars and colour schemes and features that you don't just get now. So not looking at the colours, but even the features, the way trims are finished, the way the car is finished, the chromes. There's lots of features that you can't get on modern cars anymore. And a car like this, the colour scheme, the leather, everything is totally unique and, as you say, very much of the period. The other thing with the E-Type is it can very easily convert them from left to right-hand drive. So the market is global for them. You can have a left or right-hand drive, no matter of build numbers, and you can convert them.
Are the E-Types now getting to the point where they are beyond reach? It feels like the acceleration in their price is taking them to the very highest levels of affordability for a lot of people.
One of the most exciting things about the E-Type is the variants. You've got both Series 1, 2 and 3. So a Series 1, as you see here today, a 3.8, very valuable. The early examples are rarer. As you get through the later models, the prices change and they do slightly go down. So they're accessible on a scale, but equally the top-end cars are very, very collectible.
And that presumably gives a halo effect for all of the others. So I can still be part of that E-Type world without necessarily paying top dollar.
You can be immersed within it, immersed within that classic car world, and you haven't got to spend that top money.
When it comes to absolutely barnstorming classic car investments, this has surely got to be on the list. A Mercedes, a Mercedes Gullwing. I mean, this is special. Tell me about this car.
If you're into your cars, whether it be classic or modern cars, you probably know what the Gullwing is. It was iconic in its day for a variety of reasons. It was the fastest production car at the time, the fastest car on the road when it was built. Revolutionary in period. The aerodynamic body, obviously the doors, but the way you've got this bubble roof and little pod in the middle for the driver is totally unique.
It was also fuel injection, is that right?
It's the first fuel injection system on Mercedes-Benz.
So some of the factors that make this really special are the innovation in design, obviously, but also in the engineering. So what are the values of these cars?
Well, these cars vary depending on condition, depending on who restored them. Restoration is very important on these cars.
So who restored them is as important as having it had been restored?
Knowing what you're doing, the finer details. When you've got a car of this value, of this rarity, they need to be restored correctly. And it's down to the very final details, your stitching, your trim, your finishing on your suspension. Everything has got to be just right.
Am I correct in saying that a Mercedes recently broke the record for the price of a classic car?
So this is the road car, but the race variant, which is the 300 SLR, which is a roofless version of this, completely built for track, sold for over $100 million US.
Okay, so it's $100 million for the race version. This is my affordable version. So for this, the road version, I'm assuming it's not as expensive.
Not quite as expensive, but still quite pricey. Depending on the factors we've spoken about, condition, restoration, quality, we are looking anywhere between 1 and 1.5 million US.
Okay, so that's expensive, but this is one of those cars that most people feel is just going to keep on going.
Yeah, there's nothing like it, and there won't be anything like it ever again. It is completely unique and of its era, leagues above lots of other cars that were being built at the time.
So we've looked at a Gullwing, very nice. We've looked at Jags, and they're kind of what I would call the obvious classics if you're going to look to invest. So what I wanted was to look at stuff that's a bit off the radar, and because it's off the radar, I think it's a little bit more interesting.
Yep.
But you've bought me this. I mean, this looks like a family saloon to me.
Yeah, well, it is a Nissan.
Nissans I don't associate with being classic, and certainly not as having investment potential. So why is it even here?
Well, I mean, the big thing to think about with this car is this is a future classic, if not a classic already. So, I mean, we're talking over the last few years, these have become seriously collectible.
Yeah.
Over the last decade, they've slowly increased in value.
But why?
Well,
why this?
The key thing with this car is we're not talking a standard Nissan here. So what this is it's a 1994 model, this car.
Right.
R32 GTR.
Okay. So GTR, even I know that means the hot one.
It's highly tuned above the standard car.
Yeah.
And like I said, becoming highly collectible over the last few years in particular. And also very modifiable. Lots of people are modifying these cars. There's lots of upgrades. And there's a big market for it.
Where we look at other classic cars, and originality seems to be one of the important factors. With this kind of car, with the Japanese cars, it's about the modifications.
There's two sides to it. In the more recent years, as these are becoming incredibly valuable, I mean, this car in particular has pretty much doubled in value over the last couple of years.
Wow.
Some people are now putting them back to standard because one, a standard car is quite rare now.
Yeah.
But equally, there's the flip side of home market Japanese modifications are equally rare and desirable. So we're finding that there's two markets, but both run alongside each other very nicely.
And who's buying these cars? Because this surely isn't the old guys with the flat caps and the pipes in their mouths. This must be a different market.
What we're finding is the people who grew up around the Fast and Furious era, the original films, as some of us would say, were growing up and saw these cars on TV. And now what they're doing is they've got the money to buy them. People who saw these on the road when they were new, people who got to go out in them when they were new but couldn't afford them, now have got the money, and we're seeing that these are becoming, like I say, really collectible. And
is that one of the big drivers in terms of classic car values, is that generational, that demographic thing, which is these are the cars I lusted over as a kid and now I've got some money, I can buy them.
Yeah, I mean, those are the trends we're seeing. I mean, the cars we've already spoken about, the Gullwings and the Jags, they are classics now through and through, and they're always going to be worth fair money. But like I say, cars like this, and cars as the generations have gone forward, we've seen the 80s cars had a real big hit a couple of years ago, and now the 90s cars equally are following suit. So yeah, it's trends in the market and following what people know and what people like.
This to me looks very similar to the Mercedes Gullwing you've just showed us.
What this is a 190 SL compared to obviously the 300 SL, which is the Gullwing that everyone knows it by the name. So the 190 SL at the time ran alongside the Gullwing. You can see the little eyebrows and the wheel arches here. Lots of very similar styling touches.
And is this in the same price bracket?
So these are a bit more affordable than the Gullwing.
Okay.
You retain the same styling, as I mentioned, the same build quality, the similar German over-engineering that you got with the Gullwing.
Yeah.
The main thing with these is that they were big over the entire world again. So the US cars had a lot of left-hand drive cars. There's a lot of right-hand drive cars. Okay. So finding a car to restore or to take on or to purchase in general in restored condition isn't as hard as the Gullwing.
I mean, every car we've looked at so far has been really shiny and beautiful. And this one, I'm assuming, needs to be restored.
These cars have value whether they're restored or not restored.
Of course.
There is a huge value and also a huge market for buying what is called a barn find project, for example, which this one was exactly that. Tucked in a barn for many, many years, and then we've pulled it out and then restoring it.
I presume the advantage there is you can have it restored to the spec that you want it to be restored to.
And that's one of the big pull factors of these cars, and it's something that helps drive the values up. These cars can be purchased in the state they are now.
Yeah.
Unlike the Gullwing, where it's very hard to find an unrestored example, you can then choose your colours, choose your spec, and a restorer who can do that work for you to your exact standards and taste.
And at a pace that you can afford.
Things can be stage payment. You can do things over a long period of time, restore the car over a period of time, and spread the cost.
I mean, I love the condition of this, that kind of barn find condition. But what I like about this one is that it carries so much of the classic values of the Gullwing that we've looked at, but I'm not breaking the bank to buy it.
And that's probably one of the biggest pull factors that you mentioned there. You can get into this car for a fraction of the cost of the Gullwing. You can enjoy the 50s driving experience, or 60s as these go into
and the look
cars.
And feel.
The look, feel, everything, breathing the leather, but you aren't driving a $1.5 million car.
This car feels like it's screaming for attention in that bright yellow livery, and yet it's not an obvious choice, is it? It's still a little bit off the investment radar.
The Lancia Integrale is something you might not think of straight away. Lots of people, if you're not immersed in the car world, may not know what it is. But it's a car that is absolutely dripping in pedigree, rally pedigree, and it's something that's very special, very unique, and has a great history.
I remember seeing these as a kid on TV shows, rallying, but also winning.
Yes, that's the biggest thing with Lancia. They're not around anymore. And their pedigree of winning races, rallying races, was phenomenal. They were unbeaten. Their cars were the best at the time.
And yet it looks like a little hot hatch with 4 doors.
It was practical. I mean, this, of course, is not a race car itself. This is the road-going version. But yes, it's practical, it's fast, it's 4-wheel drive. You've got 5 seats and 4 doors.
That boxy shape very much epitomises that era. And I suppose that also adds to its appeal.
Yes, and you find people who either love or hate these. But the people that love them, they really love them. And they're used to seeing them, they saw them on the screen, they saw them rallying, and that boxy styling is much loved.
And I guess that's one of the factors when it comes to investing in cars, is that love-hate thing can actually be a very good thing, because the people who love them really love them, and that makes them more distinctive.
Yes, and something like this, as you say, well, you do either love and hate, and there's a big following for the Lancia brand, and a big following for the Integrale in particular.
So we're talking about entry-level classic car investments. What have we got here?
So what we've got here is a Jaguar XJ-S. This particular one is the V12 variant, and quite evidently convertible.
Yeah.
Comes from a long line of pedigree with Jags. So we're talking, the predecessor is the E-Type. Then we've got the racing variants. We've got before that, we've got the C-Type, we've got the D-Type, and prototype E2A as well. All in the mix of this car's bloodline. Now what this car is the perfect entry-level car. You've got all that pedigree, and what you've got here is a package of V12, leather, chrome, at what is an affordable price.
The long bonnet, the big engine, it's absolutely of an era, isn't it?
Completely of the era, completely flamboyant, the biggest engine, loads of capacity, not loads of horsepower, but lots of torque, very drivable, very comfortable, and equally, as we say, very affordable. It's nothing like you'd get today.
And these were very well known across Europe and the US. I mean, these are pretty global as a car, aren't they?
And they're sold big in the UK and Europe, but equally massively in the US. They're perfect for the big open roads in the US.
Yeah.
You've got loads of space, big engine, and they just go along. I mean, mainly auto, which is a great box. Cruise down the motorway, and it's perfect.
So for this car, it's really about the brand heritage, isn't it? It's a Jaguar, and it's of the era of the classic Jaguars. It's still part of that generation and not the modern Jaguars, which are much more mainstream, I would guess, in many respects.
The thing with these cars is all its predecessors have gone up in value. All its predecessors are, on the whole, over £100,000 now.
Yeah.
And the XJ-S is one that's sitting just at that cusp.
Yeah.
So you can still get into them, you can still buy them, you can still enjoy them. They're very usable, but as we say, they're very affordable.
So it can catch those tailwinds and will follow through.
When you're looking at the pedigree and the other cars around, there's no reason why it wouldn't follow suit.
I love these. I mean, Lotus Elise is one of the cars I absolutely adore. But tell me a bit more about them, because you know far more than I do.
Yes, I mean, we're starting obviously with the Series 1.
Okay.
Iconic British sports car.
Yeah.
And redefining sports cars really at its time of launch. I mean, the Series 1 saved Lotus. They sold huge numbers of the cars. And over time, they've made various different examples of them, different engine specs, but the fundamental car is the same.
This is like a roller skate with an engine. I mean, this is an amazing sports car, as you say, and true to the Lotus tradition of lightweight, amazing handling. I know that they have a fantastic pedigree, and that's one of the great brands, Lotus, is it not?
Yes, and these are totally unique. I mean, at the time of launch, they were even more unique. You've got an aluminium tub chassis. You've got the lightweight fiberglass body, as you say, completely true to what Colin Chapman wanted back in the day. They're a racing inspired car built on the Hethel track, and there's nothing else like them on the market.
So this is where we start. So this is the Series 1. So I assume it has value just because it's the first in the line. It's the Series 1. But this is the Series 2, isn't it?
Yes, this is the Series 2. Now, the Series 2 is coming up a whole load of variants once again. Lotus tweaked and changed the cars, and it's what makes them so special.
Yeah.
They're, for many years, been a unique brand, and these cars are completely unique. Every year has a different change. Every year has a different tweak, but it's what makes them special and rare.
So this is the Series 2. This looks like it's kind of race ready.
This is a Jim Clark edition. So it's a reference to the old Jim Clark race car, the Type 25. Same colours. You've got little touches like the red interior, wooden gear knob. You get that feel of a classic car, that feel of the heritage. It just makes it that little bit more special.
Series 3, it's evolved again. You can see some of the styling changes and the development there. This almost looks like a completely different car.
Yeah, so underneath you've got the same car. You've still got the base of that aluminium tub chassis, which is hidden away.
Yeah.
Very similar, almost a evolution of the early Series 1 chassis, but everything on top here is new. You've got all new suspension, a faster engine, all the bells and whistles on this car. It's the ultimate track-inspired, right back to basics, stripped out, no carpets, and much faster.
So even within the same range, we're seeing quite different cars. And then this is also a Series 3, but it looks very different.
Yes, so same underpinnings once again, and same underpinnings as the early cars, but this is the more road-going version. Once again, a bit more affordable, less bells and whistles, very drivable, very usable, and a great car to own.
Yeah, because I know that these cars are starting to spike in value at the moment. What are the drivers for that?
One of the biggest ones is last year Lotus discontinued the Lotus Elise, Exige and Evora models. A year ago you could order one of these brand new, choose your colour. Now you can't. You've got to find what you want, and finding a good one, a nice low mileage car with a great spec, as we all know, can be hard.
And what's the other factor? You were mentioning about the American export market.
If we go back to the Series 1 we spoke about, they're just getting to that cusp of being 25 years old. As they get to that 25 years old, you can import them into America. We have lots of clients, there's lots of people who want them over there, and it really does push the market up. One of my hardest jobs as a car buyer, you're trying to look for that next step. What is the next car that's going to go? And lots of the cars we're speaking about today, some of them are on the cusp, some of them are already gone. And the Lotus Elises, particularly the Series 3s even now, have already started creeping up because of these reasons we've spoken about.
Now I know what this is. This is a Ford Escort, and the reason I know that is because my dad had one. This is literally a car of my childhood. So apart from the fact that I am very old, talk me through why this is now a classic.
Well, I think, to be honest, you touched on the main point there, and it's what you hear a lot, is that people grew up in the back of these cars, being driven around downtown, down to school.
So a lot of it is about childhood memories. A lot of it is personal associations and rekindling some of that from your past, I guess.
Exactly that.
I guess a lot also just rusted away.
So many cars rusted away, so many were scrapped. There was a point where these were worth very, very little. We're talking hundreds of pounds at some stage. You could pick up a Mark I Escort.
So people just got rid.
Exactly, we got rid. They either got scrapped or they went banger racing, and we lost a huge percentage of these rare cars.
So that brings an intrinsic rarity. And then I guess you mentioned the RS2000. There are the limited editions or the hot versions that start to become more special.
So obviously you've got the RS2000s and you've got the Mexicos as well, which are probably one of the most well known. Now, once again, limited production numbers, less cars made, less left, as we've previously touched on, once again drives up the value and the rarity. They're collector's items. There's not many left. People know them, they're poster cars, and that's why they're so valuable.
And one of the things for me, I mean, this is a very English car, but I guess that dad factor, you know, the car my dad had, the car I grew up in, the car I sat in the back seat of, that must be a factor in all markets. That must be something that's prevalent emotionally for collectors all over the world.
It runs through, as you say, all markets. I mean, in the UK, as you mentioned, I mean, the Escort is pretty iconic, I think, to most of us who have seen people in them, grown up around them, seen them on TV, in old movies, or as I said, been in the back of one when you're younger. But yeah, across markets, you're going to have that car that someone your granddad owned or your dad owned that is going to add value, and you're going to want it when you grow up.
I've had an absolutely glorious time looking at and talking about some very beautiful classic cars. But like any investment, you can build a framework and set some parameters that will help you maximize your chances of success. So what should we be looking for if we're investing in classic cars? Well, one of the first things to think about is model significance. How significant is it in terms of design, but also in terms of its engineering? Next, think about the brand heritage. What you really don't want to be is in the middle. You want to be very well known with very, very strong heritage, or really quite rare and special because of that. Another big factor is the styling. Is it beautiful? Is it bold? Is it outrageous? We buy with our eyes very often in the car market, so the styling is an incredibly important factor. The history of the particular car that you are looking at is also very important. Has it raced? Do you have history? Do you have photos of it racing? Has it had a celebrity owner? Can you prove that? These are all factors that can help push up prices. How rare is the car? Was it built in large numbers or small numbers? Are you looking at a limited edition? Are you looking at a special edition? Is it the first or the last of the line? These are all factors to consider. Finally, do you love it? Does this car make your heart sing? Do you want to sit in it? Do you want to drive it? Do you just want to go into your garage and look at it? Because if you do, that's probably the best investment of all.